Hi everyone, welcome back to Cello Tips. Today we are going to talk about the anatomy of the bow arm. Now, I know a lot of cellists that are constantly trying to find ways to improve their sound for an instrument that is known for its beauty of sound. This is something that we can all strive to do better with. Now, the thing about improving your sound, or about anything in your technique for that matter, is that in order to do so, you have to analyze exactly what is going on in the way you are using the instrument in order to find a better way to do it. Now, on this channel, we've talked a lot about the way that you connect with the string, angles, relationship to the bridge, things like this. But I realize we haven't talked a whole lot about the physicality of the way you use the bow. And this is something very, very important. Although it's not directly related to the vibrations of the string, it's everything that is responsible for pulling the bow and therefore creating the sound. And depending on how you use the physicality, the anatomy of the bow arm, it's going to change the quality of sound that you make tremendously. So what it comes down to is one basic concept, and that is the primary joint that should be in motion to pull the bow across the string is the shoulder. Now, of course, within the arm, there are other joints that one can use: the elbow, the wrist, the finger joints, and these will be used, and we'll get to that. But the origin of where the bow movement comes from is the shoulder. Some might even argue it's even before that it's from like the spine or the waist or something, and you know, maybe some people play that way, but I think for the vast majority of us, the goal should be for it to be coming primarily from the shoulder. And the reason for this is because the shoulder is a larger joint than the elbow and the wrist and so forth. And it's one that is closer to the center of our body, and the muscles that are used to move the shoulder, to operate the shoulder, are much larger than the muscles that operate the elbow joint and the wrist. So when you use larger joints, larger muscles that are closer to the origin of your nervous system, the spine and such, it allows for the rest of your extremity to be much freer and looser. You can think about it this way, even try yourself without a cello. If you're thinking of moving only your wrist like this, naturally everything else before the wrist and the rest of the arm and your whole torso becomes quite tight, actually. At the very least stationary, but usually it creates tension in most people. Same thing with the elbow. If I'm concentrating only using the elbow, everything before becomes tight. Now, if I think of I'm moving my shoulder, you can see automatically, I'm sure if you're trying yourself, you see automatically you are looser. And you may ask, why does it matter if I'm tight or not? It's a good question. Well, if the rest of my arm is tight, these joints are all locked, that's contributing also to tightness in the fingers and the hands. And that tightness is going straight into your bow. If you have a tight bow grip, tight bow like this, you see, it doesn't work so well. No, you can't make any connection with the string. The string needs warmth of motion, generous motion. So if you use the shoulder primarily and then allow everything to be loose, suddenly you're able to make a real sound. So when you're thinking about using the shoulder, it's going to be much more effective for you to be thinking of the muscles that are moving this joint. If you think just about the joint specifically, it's a little hard to get a connection to that. Now, if you think of the down bow fundamentally as a pulling movement, this type of movement, and try to connect with the muscles that are making that movement. Now, I'll tell you, you're using the back, and that's several different muscles. It's your lateral muscle here, which is the primary muscle contributing to that pulling motion, and also the one that's contributing to this side-to-side motion on the down bow specifically is the rear deltoid muscle, which is on the back of your shoulder. So that's contributing to this, and you should be using both of them more or less on that down bow, especially when we're going for legato sound, big legato singing sound. Now you can flip it around for the up bow. So for the up bow, we're actually using the chest and the front of the shoulder. See? So between down bow and up bow, you are alternating between these two sets of muscle groups. Yeah. Now, those are the most important things to be aware of when you're using the bow. Everything else beyond that, the best starting place is for you to make sure that they're remaining loose, the elbow, the wrist, the fingers, that they go with the bow. The bow guides them. Yeah. But they're not getting tight, as we already talked about, and they're not the primary activator of the bow. Now, there are a few exceptions to that. For example, if you're playing a kind of short stroke like this, kind of very short marked stroke, that's something that's probably more natural for you to use your wrist for. If I use the shoulder for that, it's a lot of excessive motion. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Also, if you're trying to get a different color, something perhaps softer, you might want to use more elbow. So again, it's contributing to a different sound to add to your color palette. Yeah. The shoulder is the starting place, and I do recommend it for the majority of the use of your bow, especially in singing passages. Now, the only other use that is important to think about of these smaller joints is in order to maintain the angles of the bow and the contact point. You see, if I only use the shoulder and I don't use anything else, that's the motion of the bow. See, it's not even on the string anymore. So obviously, in order to have a straight bow or whatever angle of bow you want, you're going to have to use the smaller muscles in order to execute that. especially as I get to the upper half, the tip of the bow, I'm using primarily the elbow to finish this up. Some people who might have shorter arms, also, I would suggest as you're going to the upper half, the tip of the bow, you might want to slightly move your torso out with the bow arm as well to make that easier, because this kind of position is not going to be good for anybody. And the finger joints are what are primarily responsible also for changing the amount of bow hair we use, which is a big factor for color, for all the creative elements we want to use in music. So I would think of it that way, to summarize, that the shoulder joint, through the use of the back and the chest, is the primary motor for the movements of the bow. And then the smaller joints within your arm are the ones that sort of fill out the subtleties of whatever passage you're working on. And you need to experiment with that yourself. There's no correct formula for everybody. Everybody's body is different. Everybody has a different connection between their mind and their body. But one thing that is good for everybody, I know, is to develop that connection better. That when you're thinking about sound, trying to improve your sound, that you are aware of which muscles are being used and which joints are being used. And I'm sure if you're having problems in your sound, tightness in your sound, somewhere in your arm, or maybe even further back in your spine, in your neck, there's going to be tension. And if you can find how to eliminate that tension, you're going to, I guarantee, eliminate at least some tension in your sound. So I hope this was helpful for you all. Please let me know if you have any requests for future episodes, and have a great day. Bye.